anybody in the private sector would do an investment like that. Only politicians. Well, here's the big end of the story that you don't hear much about. Do you know how much money I raised to become the governor of Minnesota?
I'm going to guess, because I've done a little homework, $300,000.
You got it. $300,000. Well, you do your homework, because most people are totally unaware. $300,000, which, and at that time, 98, the Dems and Repubs combined spent $12 million to win that election. Well, my father, that's my one regret in life, is that my mother and father were both gone by the time I won governor. They never saw me become governor.
They would have been proud.
It was a first marriage for both, and they were career people. My dad was 40 and my mom was 30 when they got married, so I always had much older parents than most of my schoolmates did. But I could say to my dad today, if he were around, your son's not a crook, because I bet I'm the only elected official at a high-level election, or maybe any election, for statewide to federal in the last 50 years, who can say they made more money doing the job than what they raised and spent to get it.
You started giving tax money back to the citizens, didn't you?
Well, I'll explain that. But anyway, I made $120,000 a year as governor, which, if my Roosevelt High School math is correct, that means I made $480,000 for the 4 years, which I only spent $300,000.
Yeah.
Who else could possibly say that? Now, where were we going? What did you say until I got that in?
Well, we were talking about primarily what was going on in your life at the time as the governor. But I wanted to ask you why you didn't seek re-election. You would have won.
I know. I had the highest approval rating in Minnesota history for a governor at one point. I was 73%. I'll tell you why. And I wrote about it in my previous book 2 books ago called Don't Start the Revolution Without Me, because I didn't want to discuss it with the Minnesota media because I went on war with them. When they attacked my children when I was in office, I swore I would never talk to them once I got out of office, ever again. And I've kind of mellowed. I've talked to a couple media since then, but I went a few years without. Here's the reason why I didn't seek re-election. It was my wife's health.
Okay.
And I didn't feel that was there. I didn't want the media to know about it because all they would do is exploit it. Yes. That was part of the problem. It affected my wife tremendously, and you can imagine as a mother when her children get attacked for no reason by the media. You know.
Do you miss it at all?
Sure. I miss it, absolutely. You accomplish things. It's exciting. You're the top man in the state. Nobody can tell you what to do.
Yeah.
You know, but no, my wife's health, and I might add she's doing much, much better now, and part of it is our move to Mexico, where we live a real simple life down there. I like to tell people, they say, what do you do in Mexico? And I said, well, I wake up every morning with nothing to do, and when I go to bed that night, I'm half done. And so she's doing much better now. But I will tell you this, I will not put any elected job ahead of my wife. My wife is more important to me. We've been together 35 years now. It'll be 36 this summer.
Good.
She is far more important to me than holding any political position. So that is the major reason I did not seek re-election or a second term. Also because I believe one of the big problems in our country is career politicians who make a career out of it.
There's no question about it. But while you were in office, you saved enough money from the state coffers that you started giving taxpayers money back.
No. It wasn't that. It was the robust economy. We had such a robust economy then. Remember, this is before 9/11.
But you did give people refunds,
absolutely.
basically.
What happened was this. I'll explain. We would set a budget, and of course you got your normal taxes in place because the economy was so powerful. That's why I ran for governor. The state was getting surpluses. You know, they were bringing, and of course at a state level you have to run by law a balanced budget.
Right.
It's not like the feds who can get all this debt.
Yeah.
But because of revenues were coming in so big, that was why I ran. We had a surplus before I got in office, and they spent it. And I said, wait a minute. They had a budget. if there's excess money, it doesn't give the politicians the right to be kids in a candy store and just go on a shopping spree. You give that money back. And so we had 3 surpluses out of the 4 years I was in office, and we would give checks back to the people in the form of a sales tax rebate. And the reason I did it that way, the Republicans wanted it to be an income tax rebate. Well, if I would have done an income tax rebate, they would have to declare it, which means a third of their money would go to the feds. I thought, why do that? Let's make it a sales tax rebate. We'll credit it to the sales tax. You can't deduct the sales tax off your taxes. So therefore, when you get the money back as a sales tax rebate, it's free money. You don't have to declare it to the federal government. And people called them Jesse checks. In fact, I met an elderly woman who told me that she took her check, and some of the checks were as much as $1,500, $1,800 to people. It depended on your income and how much we felt you would buy, things like that. It wasn't purely accurate. No, you could never be purely accurate, but it was close enough. And this old woman told me she needed a new lawnmower. And when the check came, it was enough money for her. She went down and bought her new lawnmower, and she named it Jesse.
I love it. Well, you know what I like about you, Jesse? If you and I went to lunch, and I had a $20 bill on the table and went to wash my hands, when I came back, you'd put another 20 down there. It would be 40. Any other politician, the 20 would be gone.
Well, maybe I learned that overseas, because when we were overseas in the military, which, of course, in my day it was Vietnam, money really meant nothing. We were into Louis L'Amour cowboy books. And if you put a Louis L'Amour cowboy book and a $50 bill down on your rack, your bed, the 50 would still be there. The Louis L'Amour cowboy book would be gone because that had value. The money didn't.
Jesse, stay with us. We're going to take this quick break. We'll be right back with Jesse Ventura, his book, 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read. When I come back, I'll also tell you about a couple book signings he's going to have in the Los Angeles area. And next hour, we'll take phone calls with Jesse Ventura. We've got him for 2 hours. We'll be right back. Well, with New York Times bestselling author Jesse Ventura wrote a book with Dick Russell called 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read. What are some of them? We'll get into that in a moment. By the way, those of you in the greater Los Angeles area, on Tuesday and Wednesday, Jesse will be signing his book for you. Let me give you those locations. The ESP Zone at LA Live, great area, by the way. He'll be there Tuesday night, 7:30 to 9 p.m. Pacific time, those of you that live out that way. Then on Wednesday, he'll be at the Borders Bookstore in Torrance, California. That's 3700 Torrance Boulevard. He'll be there from 7 to 9 p.m. Going out there, it's a real treat. Jesse Ventura, our special guest, and we'll be back with more in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. We'll take calls next hour with Jesse, not this hour. Jess, all the lines are already busy. People. Tell me about the evolution of the television show, which is the highest-rated show on True TV.
Well, first, let me say, I now have a website.
First super.
Time in history. And,
you've come out of the dark ages. Tell me about it.
Well, because my son's running it. He's the computer whiz. But anyway, for those that are interested out there on Coast to Coast, it's, of course, all one word, no apostrophe. It's weain'tgottimetobleed.com.
Super, and we'll put a link up for you at Coast
Terrific.
To Coast.
Yep, weain'tgottimetobleed.com. And that's it went up. We went up a week ago. Then the official Jesse Ventura. This is the only one that's actually official. If there's others out there, they're not. But this is my official website.
Ask your son tomorrow how many hits he got on the website, and it will astound you.
Okay, I sure will. I'll see him tomorrow, so I will ask him if he's checked at that time, and then I'll see him again Wednesday, too. So between the 2 days, I'll try to find out.
I'll make you a little wager. You ready?
Yep.
I bet you will get slammed so much that he will say, Dad, it got slowed down to a stop for at least a few hours. Okay. That's the bet. You're on.
I'll find out what he says to me about it.
Super. Okay, now the TV show, Conspiracy Theory. You know, when I started doing this radio program, Jesse, full-time back in 2003, half of the subjects I was really into, the paranormal, the unusual, ghosts, and things like that.
Yep.
The conspiracy stories, you know, I was 9 years in the Navy. I was an officer. You know, I believed the government line. I was a little weary about these, other than the Kennedy assassination. But
Right.
then, I started getting people calling me saying, "Hey, you got to listen to this Alex Jones guy, or you got to listen to this and that." And all of a sudden, I woke up. I simply woke up. Is that what happened with you too?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm also a Navy veteran, not quite as long as you, but of 6 years. And I again, Kennedy, the same. I started studying Kennedy, ironically, when wrestling made its change in the mid-'80s. We went from territories driving cars to when Vince McMahon took us national, and all of a sudden we're flying in airplanes all around the country. Well, anyone who travels at all in airplanes knows they're boring. You spend hours in airports, hours on planes, and in wrestling you do it every day.
Yeah.
So I began reading, and I began digesting everything I could on the Kennedy assassination, and, I came to the conclusion we've been fed a pile of bull. Lee Harvey Oswald could not have acted alone to pull this off like they told us. It's a lie. Well, then, of course, as we got to 9/11 happening, I was in office, and I, like everyone, went into full combat mode when I was in office. I felt, hey, the state of Minnesota could be a threat with Mall of America and all of that. And so I was busy doing that. I didn't pay attention until I got out of office in 2003. And what really caused me to start really questioning things was when George Bush stated we were now going to invade Iraq.
Uh-huh.
Because I thought, wait a minute, they told us that these guys, 19 guys that attacked us, there wasn't one Iraqi. Not one.
Not one.
Why would we invade Iraq? I thought this is as strange as if Pearl Harbor happened and we invaded Korea, and thought, well, after all, they're Asian too, aren't they? And I thought, this makes no sense. This is crazy. Why are we going into Iraq? And, of course, then in 2004, I was teaching out at Harvard when Robert McNamara came through and basically said that the Gulf of Tonkin incident was a fraud. He fessed up that he stated it didn't happen. And I thought, my God, that's what put us into the Vietnam War, where I'm a veteran of. 58,000 of my generation killed, possibly 1 million or more Vietnamese killed, and the catalyst was what we would call, of course, today a false flag operation. Are you kidding me? Well, that's when I really started to say, what is going on here, which was after 2004. And I started to truly then investigate 9/11. And, of course, my son came home, and the big catalyst there was he kept saying to me, Dad, you got to see this thing on the Internet called, what was it again, spare change or loose change?
Loose change.
Loose change. He said, you got to watch this thing on the Internet, loose change. So my wife and I had come home from Mexico, and it was I remember May or June. It was a beautiful, sunny Sunday, nothing to do. We had nothing to do. And I looked at my wife and said, well, this thing my son keeps telling me about loose change, let's watch it. I watched it, and I went through every emotion I could. From anger, laugh, crying, everything, almost feeling sick when I started seeing what they had produced on this thing. And then I became focused on 9/11, and I said, I want to learn as much as I can about what they said happened here. And today, I don't believe the government story of 9/11.